Now that we've seen how to handle some of the text content on the page, next I want to take a look at how we can add some images to keep our pages interesting. The first thing we need to do before adding the images to our page is to make sure we set up the image for our web browsers. Images can come in a lot of different formats, but when working with web browsers we need to make sure that our image is in a format that a browser can render, so we may need to convert it. Also, we need to make sure that the image is sized properly so that it fits on the page. Our digital cameras and cell phones can take very high-resolution pictures, sometimes 3,000 or 4,000 pixels wide, and even though a browser can resize the image for us, we still want to consider how long the image will take to download. A typical image on a web page may only need to be a few hundred pixels wide, so we don't want to make our users download a huge image every time if they don't need to. Nearly every picture application is capable of resizing and converting images, so you don't need anything expensive or complicated to do it. But since a lot of web developers use Photoshop for this, I'll do my demonstration with that. And if you're a Photoshop user, I can also give you a few tips on how to use it properly. Now, if you don't have Photoshop and want to follow along, you can accomplish the same thing using Microsoft Paint, which comes free with Windows, or you can use Paintbrush if you have a Macintosh. Each one of these programs includes all the features I'll be using, so just pick the one that's best for you. In our Section 2 Basics folder, I've got a file right here, goldengate.tiff. So let me get started by opening it up inside of Photoshop. Now the first thing we want to do is change the image size. In Photoshop, that feature is located in the Image pull-down menu, and it's called Image Size. Now whatever program you're using, make sure the image is measured using pixels. Since we're not printing, inches and centimeters will be useless for us. You can see that this image currently is over 4,000 pixels wide, which is far too big for our page. So I'll just start by changing the width to 500 pixels. Most every program will let you keep the same aspect ratio for an image, so Photoshop will figure out the height for me. I'll just click OK, and then I can use the View menu to zoom it up to 100%. And now I can see exactly how big this will be on my web page. Next, we need to change the format, and for most programs you can simply choose Save As to select the file type you want. For our browsers, we need to make sure our image is in one of three formats. It needs to be either JPEG, PNG, or a GIF format. Now, as you can see here in Photoshop, you may not be sure which one to use, since there are several JPEG formats right here. So, if you're using Photoshop only, you may actually want to use a completely different feature. I'll just cancel out of the Save As box, and I'll go back up to the File menu and I'll choose Save for Web. Now I know that all of you won't be using Photoshop for your image conversions, but this Save for Web feature is also a great place for me to go over the different formats and options that you can set, no matter what program you end up using. As you can see, it brings up a new window, and here we get access to all of the different options for each of the image formats. We get a tab with the original view of the image and its original size, as well as a preview of the saved version with its size as well. At the top right of the window, you can see a pull-down where we choose our file format, and it includes all of the image formats our browser can use. We have JPEG, GIF, and PNG. And the first thing we need to do is choose which one. So let's walk through using all three of them so you understand better how each one works. All of these file formats were chosen for our web images because they're smaller file sizes, and therefore download and display faster in the browser. These file formats are smaller because they all use some kind of compression on the file, so that means the converted image won't be exactly the same as the original one. Our goal is to make the image as small as possible, but still keep it looking good. Both the GIF and the PNG8 formats get a smaller file size by reducing the number of colors that the image uses. For a GIF image, the maximum number of colors is 256. Now let me just switch a setting here. I'll go to the 2-Up Preview tab. And that way we can see our original image up here in the top, and its file size, and our converted image down here at the bottom, and its corresponding file size too. At first glance, the images look the same, but you can see already there's a big difference in file size. The original is 312K, and the new GIF image format is only 49K. We can make the GIF file even smaller by going up to the Colors menu and choosing a lesser number of colors. If I set this to 16, you'll notice that the file size goes down to 24.3. But you also might notice by looking at the image that it's not quite as good as the first image we saw. I'll use Ctrl+ to zoom in so we can see a little bit better. Now the original image uses lots of colors, much more than 256, so when we reduce the number, our program has to replace some pixel colors with others. The fewer the colors, the smaller the file size, but also the worse the image will look. Even if I bump back up to 128 colors, you can still see that the images differ quite a bit, and some parts of the image become more pixelated. If I zoom back to 100%, you can see that although the image is pixelated, it still looks pretty good, so I might be able to use this on my web page. Now it's worth noting that GIF files have an extra feature. You can see it down here in the Options menu, and basically you can combine several images in a GIF to make a small animation, and then load it onto your page as just a single image. You've probably seen a lot of these as small advertisements or animated buttons on other sites. Now the PNG settings give you two choices. PNG 8 is just like GIF in that you only get a maximum number of 256 colors, so the results will likely be the same as the GIF file. The PNG 24 setting lets you use the full normal palette of up to 17 million colors, so the size will increase a lot. But it also gives you a transparency option, which can be great for images where you have a transparent background to use. This is perfect for any image with a custom shape, like a company logo, where you need the image to float above the background on a page. The majority of images used on the web are JPEGs. The JPEG format is different since it uses a math equation to compress the images. So a JPEG image will let us use all the colors of the original file, and you control the file size using a quality setting. As you can see, we're using the default quality setting of 60, and if we look at the file size for our JPEG right now, it's half the size of the GIF. If I drag the quality setting even lower, you'll see I can come up with a truly tiny size. That drops the file size to 7K in this case. But let's zoom in on the image again so we can see what's happening. I'll just drag the image over so we can see more detail on the bridge. And you'll notice that in the compressed file, the fine lines of the bridge cables are very blurry and unfocused when the quality is this low. I'll reset the quality back up to 60 again, and now we can see in the preview that the cables look much better and very close to the original image. Now this particular preview feature in Photoshop is really nice since you can play with the settings and see exactly what you'll be doing to the image and how that affects the final size. Now as you can see, you can save any image into any format you like, but there are some rules of thumb that'll help you choose which one is best. Most photographs look better as JPEGs, since they have access to every color available, 17.6 million different ones. And you can customize the quality of each image to get the best picture in the smallest size. For most photos, that ends up in the 60 to 70 range, so using 60 as a default is safe in most cases. When you have a more graphic image that makes use of solid color areas, something like a company logo for instance, you can use a GIF or a PNG, since the number of colors used in a computer-generated graphic aren't likely to go past the 256 color limit. And you can always try out an image in both formats and then just pick the best one to use. For our image, I'll just keep it at JPEG at a quality of 60, and now we just need to save the file to our site. Now there is one more thing for Photoshop users about the Save for Web feature. You'll notice this window also lets me change the image size. So if you're using Photoshop, you can just as easily resize the image here instead of using the Image menu. I'll just click Save, and I want to keep it in the Section 2 folder, but let's change the name. I'll just add -sm to the file name, and now my image is ready to use.